We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
What of the big meeting with President Vladimir Putin? Who ate whose lunch? Who appeared the real statesman? And was anything of substance really achieved at this widely anticipated semi-summit? To help us sift through the debris, we're joined by Liberty Nation author Dave Patterson, a former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Controller and retired Air Force pilot. Welcome, Dave.
Welcome. Thank you very much. That's a great introduction. I appreciate that. And glad to be with you, Mark.
Really my pleasure to have you here. So, Dave, we're seeing the spin from both sides of the political aisle here. Can you give us your estimation of who, if anyone, came out on top?
I think you have to look at the summit from two perspectives. One is, perhaps a little bit on the inside baseball, strategic communications, and then on the substantive issues. From the aspect of strategic communications, Mark, I think that the White House agreeing to let Putin go first and by himself was a huge mistake. I think it was emblematic of why it was such a terrible decision with the last question that the Canadian reporter asked President Putin. And she relayed a question from her 9-year-old daughter. And it gave Putin the opportunity to wax on about international relations and peace and freedom. And he left the stage a statesman. Contrast that with President Biden, who left the stage arguing with one of the pool reporters. The optics, not exactly good for President Biden. On the substantive issues, I think that Putin didn't even need to go to the summit. I mean, he got what he wanted. Sanctions lifted on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and a 5-year extension to the New START treaty talks, which is what he was really after with President Biden.
So do you think that much of the actual decisions here, as you mentioned, the 5-year extension and the sanctions lifted on Nord Stream, do you think this was all organized in advance by the apparatchiks, and really the actual summit itself was more just a photo opportunity for the two world leaders?
It may have been organized on the part of the Russians. I'm not so sure about the American side. But if it were organized by the State Department and our diplomats, they did a bad job. Because what they did is they left the president simply talking about the atmospherics of the summit, while President Putin got to answer substantive questions and put his position clearly out there for the press, and President Biden was just playing catch up.
That's actually a topic I want to delve into a little bit, Dave, if I may. So as you alluded to earlier, President Biden and Putin, they held separate press conferences, which is in itself, that's a bit of an oddity. And CNN actually suggested that this was in order to avoid conflicting messages. And that really struck out at me. Now, what was so divergent in their summations? Why would they opt for this rather unnatural format?
Well, I think first of all, to eliminate divergent points of view, no. That's exactly what you want to do. You don't want one of your opponents being able to say something that you drastically disagree with and not be there to rebut it. So that's kind of a silly argument to put forward. But the reason I think that it may have been purely logistics, they're heading off at different places, but my sense is that, and this is a somewhat cynical perspective, my sense is that the White House did not want the president in a circumstance where he is taking ad hoc questions and speaking off the cuff to be compared immediately to Putin, who has his script down perfectly. He's a KGB agent after all. I mean, he's a former KGB officer. I mean, he is an expert at deflecting questions.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression myself, especially when, as I'm sure many people have noticed of late, President Biden, I'm sure he's semi-joking when he says, I'm not allowed to answer any more questions or I'll be in trouble. But all the questions that he has been having, they are approved questions, presumably by the White House press staff. So when he was confronted at the end by the reporter that you mentioned earlier, and he kind of flew off the handle at her, do you think that was an outswelling of frustration at not being able to do what he has actually been doing for the last 5 decades, is thinking on his feet and dealing with press and people? And he's always had quite a short temper in these situations. But do you think the frustration's been getting to him?
Oh, I think it's always a bad thing to start to ascribe motivation to what people say.
I believe Joe Biden said that exact line during one of the debates.
Yes, well, if he can steal trust but verify, I'll take one of his.
I did notice he didn't quite produce it with the elan of Ronald Reagan, but it was there. The words were there, but as Eric Morecambe and Ernie Wise used to say, I am saying the right words, just not necessarily in the right order. So, Dave, you wrote an article recently on LibertyNation.com that discussed the notable Russian summits of the past. And it's a wonderful piece, and it really provides a unique insight and perspective on these kind of events. How do you think this particular, if we can call it a summit, be remembered?
I think it will be remembered as long as the subjects are brought up and as long as both President Biden and President Putin discuss them and the issues in coming meetings. But historically, probably will go down with James Buchanan talking with his staff.
That's an interesting perspective to have on it. And Dave, last question, if I may. Now they've discussed obviously cybersecurity and the Nord Stream, and they've discussed different areas of cooperation going forward. Do you think that this presages a closer relationship, a better relationship, or is it more, as you pointed out, an opportunity for Vladimir Putin to appear the statesman on the world stage?
I think that this is pretty much a vanilla summit. It's pretty hard to draw any conclusions about future relationships from it. Both went away saying that the talks were constructive, and I think that's on page 462 of the State Department Diplomatic Speak Handbook. And so I think that what you will see in the future is much more in terms of the working groups between the two countries' diplomatic staffs.
Okay, one follow-up on that. Do you think this semi-summit has helped or hindered President Biden's reputation domestically?
Oh, I mean, if you're going to be relying on the barometer of our media, he was fantastic and couldn't have done a better job. But you know, they're going to realize at some point that this was not his finest hour, and that go on to some other subject.
Dave Patterson, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure being with you.
And you're listening to Liberty Nation Radio. We'll be right back after this short break. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.